pretty much all the car commercials you see and most of the big stunt action movie stuff, especially around cars. Usually it's one of us that's behind the wheel. So that turned into just what, amazing experience. And ultimately that, even with Mouse, turned into us racing the Baja 1000 and winning it in 2002 and driving home from the middle, from San Ignacio, which is an incredible spot in the middle of Baja, Oasis, and really sort of writing and thinking about what Dust to Glory would be and what that movie would be like. So that was funny how it all kind of circles back around.
Yeah. So I definitely want to explain to the listeners what Dust to Glory is, but before I do that, you mentioned something that kind of hit home with me, and that was the time period in which the stunt business was shifting more towards the specialties or the niche disciplines. And kind of a quick and funny side story. I did some work for Stu Siegel down here in San Diego. He was able to Taft-Hartley me into the Screen Actors Guild, and it was based around a vehicle that my dad's company built for a show he was doing here, Pensacola Wings of Gold.
Right.
But long story short, his stunt coordinator, which I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he was one of the stunt doubles for Bo or Luke, whoever the blonde was in the Dukes of Hazzard, the original Dukes of Hazzard. And I had gotten to go and do some work on that show, probably 3 or 4 shows, and he pulled me aside one day and he goes, "Listen, I know you're a buddy of Stu's and he's got you in here, but at the end of the day, I'm the coordinator." And he said, "I don't buy into this whole specialty thing. You don't just get to show up here and be a driver. If you're going to work for me, you need to be a well-rounded stuntman." And I don't think it was 21 or 22. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'll do that. So I started going and hanging around. He had a house. I think he was in like Poway or Carlsbad area, and he had an air ram, and he started showing me some of the basics, barroom fights and that kind of stuff. And then he goes to me one day. He's like, "All right, so anybody that's going to keep working for me has got to take a car hit." And I was like, "Oh, I could do that. I crashed a ton of cars. I'm not afraid to crash a car." And so he goes, no, not crash a car. You got to get hit by a car. And I was thinking, I don't know about that. I mean, I'll crash a car, but I don't want to have a car run into me. But that was his whole deal. You had to take whatever the speed was. You had to roll up over the hood and off the back of the car to be accepted into his little unit. And I liked surfing too much.
Yeah, right?
To risk my knees. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I mean, he was ready to teach me how to do it. You probably know how to do it, but that was the end of my stunt career, was when I stopped working for, I wish I remembered his name, but anyways, yeah, well, he didn't buy into the specialty being good at one thing.
And I'll say, and funny enough on that is, that's what we get brought in for, the guys that I've mentioned, some of the guys on my team. And obviously, there's certainly guys that are super capable at everything. And I think even the stunt business, it's almost kind of coming back around where there are, because there are places to go, practice and train to do so much of this stuff. There are definitely guys that are super capable at a lot more things than I'm capable of. I mean, for whatever good fortune on my end, I was able to kind of make it in the car world and make that my specialty, and basically do what I love for a living has been incredible. So, that being said, I have done a couple car hits, and I prefer not to. I've crashed enough, and I think even for me too, it's like all the years of racing motocross and cars. I've had plenty of mega hits, 100-mile-an-hour crashes, and knocked out, and broken backs, and broken hips, and legs, and feet, and cheeks, and waking up in MRI tubes. So, getting hit, and especially at this stage, I'm pretty much over it. I can honestly say that. So.
Well, so let's go back to Baja here. You mentioned Dust to Glory, and I'm going to assume that some of our listeners know what that is. But let's talk a little bit about. Sounds like you and Mouse came up with the concept on the drive back from San Ignacio, and tell us how that came to be, and then what it ultimately ended up being.
Yeah, well, I think Mouse, of course. I mean, natural as a filmmaker since the beginning. His dad was in the business, so he grew up around it. But after a really good season, we were racing Class 30 motorcycles, and that particular race, of course, all that you go through in racing Baja and getting beat up, and we Mouse handed off the bike to me, and then I finished in San Ignacio. We still had another, I think, 400 miles to go, and I handed the bike off. But from there, we needed to head back for a job, so literally hopped in the car and started driving home, not knowing. We knew that when we handed the motorcycle off, we were in first place, but we weren't going to find out where we finished until I think later that night or maybe even the next day. But as we were driving back towards the border, just talking about all the experiences and all the craziness and all the things that people don't get to see, I think it was kind of that light bulb moment for Mouse, and certainly, for me that somebody needed to make a movie on it. And then it really kind of went to like, well, how the heck would you make a movie? Of course, you think typical movie, everything's very figured out and sorted out. You know exactly where you are. You're in one spot, and all of a sudden now you're going to try and go 1,000 miles and have film crews, and what stories are you going to tell? And so we kind of just went one by one, the things that we both had seen or heard about or knew about, and really kind of compiled like almost what would that movie look like? And of course, then Mouse, when we got back, took it from there with Scott Waugh and Dana Brown, all those guys, and Kevin Ward, and who was actually on our team when we won that year, and created a pretty amazing movie that I think probably spoke to it, about as good as you ever could. At least, for anybody that's ever raced down there, even I would say it's one of those movies that my wife, the first time she saw it, just absolutely loved it, and she's not the biggest fan of racing, so funny enough.
So a couple things on that. It transcends the racing world for sure, in my opinion, and that's not because I'm a fan of racing or I'm a part of racing, but really because I've talked to so many people over the last decade plus that have seen that the movie, and it moved them in a lot of different ways. And some people, they saw the movie and it drove them to eventually come and compete in the Baja 1000, which is a testament to the power of the movie. The other thing I wanted to say is, and I don't know if you know this, but you mentioned your wife and not being into racing. And did you know my wife was in the movie?
I don't think I knew that.
She was part of the girls' team that was featured on the show, yeah.
Now that does ring a bell.
She's very quick to point out to anybody that's ever brings up Dust to Glory. That's super
cool. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it again tonight.
Yeah, and I'm the guy who was in and around all of it the entire time, but never once made it on camera and was not a part of it. I was on the back end on a lot of it, but was never on camera and never recognized in that way. So my wife loves pointing out the fact that she's a movie star and I'm not.
Right. Well, you know what? Sometimes that's the best.
Yeah. Well, it's
happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool that she got to race. She got a glimpse into my world for sure.
Right.
So I've been involved here recently in a few film projects. Well, and the one that I did with you, I guess it was not recent, 4 or 5 years ago, with Mouse. But something that strikes me about being in Baja with a camera, or the need to tell a story, a visual story, is that there is absolutely no shortage of I don't want to say the word shots because it sounds so lame, but you can get some pretty stunning imagery without being very good behind the lens, I guess is what I'm getting at. The diversity, the light, the types of flora and fauna, and the richness of the people and the clothes that they wear and so on. And it's really not a question. I guess I'm just stating something that I'm wondering if you feel the same way about.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That's probably actually one of the things that we talk about when you talk about Baja. I think the person that hasn't been there or doesn't really have much knowledge of it just sort of thinks desert. And, even the first time I took my son down there, and all of a sudden you're actually going through forest and sand dunes and obviously oasis type environments like San Ignacio and fish camps, and it's absolutely endless. I think you probably can cover just about everything down there. Like you say, the people, the clothes, it's epic.
It's funny, people invariably will say, where's your favorite place in Baja? And for me, there's no way to answer that question. It depends on the time of year. It depends on the mood I'm in. It depends on the people I'm with. Basically, it's the entire peninsula, 2 states. Every single stretch of it every single mile of it is got a different feel, different rewards for going down different roads. And in the same breath, I'll also be the first person to say there's so much of it that I still need to explore. So much of it that I need to explore. I think every time I think I know the peninsula, I end up on a different road that I have never been on and am blown away at something new.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I mean, again, it's like somebody asking, what's your favorite song?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of favorite songs, and like you say, it depends on the moment, and what you're experiencing in your life or who you're with. And I think actually when we were having a conversation, you and I not too long ago, talking about obviously the winds and going fast and pushing the envelope is so amazing and feels so good. But at the same time, you'd had an experience with your dad and talking about just drinking some beers and cruising in the buggy, slow speed, and watching sunsets and how special that was. That's a completely different experience. But so, both of them are overwhelming at times and beautiful and, life-changing moments. And again, it's all perspective and timing,
So you mentioned a buddy of ours, and I think a much closer buddy of yours, but I got to know him briefly, Tom Mason. Unfortunately, he recently passed away. But man, what a dynamic person. And I remember you guys had like a club or something. What was the name of your motorcycle club? Am I
Yeah, it was no, you're right. It was the Heaven's Devils.
Heaven's Devils.
And Hell's Angels, Heaven's Devils. It was really just sort of a play on words. And ultimately, I think with Tom or anybody that knew Tom or somebody that knew someone who knew Tom, I mean, the stories were just endless about the guy he was like Baja. I mean, he was the most vibrant, biggest personality, just light up a room. Some people have that ability, and he was one of those guys. I mean, they broke the mold. Although his grandson looks like he's probably going to head in the same direction, but just one of those people that always made everyone in a room feel special. And I think about all the times that we did the ride, from Ensenada to Cabo and crisscross back and forth, and all the adventures and things that happen. And he was one of those guys that just always had absolutely the biggest smile, whatever the situation was. I mean, if there was ever a guy, I looked up in the dictionary for the term half full, that was him for sure. So, but yeah, Heaven's Devils, that was a pretty wild group. That was all through 20s and 30s, some pretty wild times for sure.
So you guys did some rides in Baja.
We did quite a few rides, and I mean, I didn't even touch how many rides he did. I'd actually have to ask somebody. I'd have to guess that he probably did 30 plus rides down there.
Yeah.
I mean, from the top to the tip. I mean, he's probably way more than that. It could be completely off, but he spent a lot of time in Baja for sure.
But
doing
so
very well.
For the listeners hearing this, when we talk about this, this is not a motorsporting type of a ride that we're referring to. It's much more of a guys get together and top to tip. You cross the border and you go all the way to the bottom. And there's a lot of different groups and people that do that today. There were, I'm assuming, far less back then. But one thing, and I'm not a motorcycle guy. I've just recently been hanging around guys that ride bikes. But the thing that has really hit me with the whole motorcycle in Baja scenario is that you really are taking chances. Not chances that I don't mean to say that you're being foolish, but there's just not a lot of room for error, and the level of trust and experience with the group that you're with, and the caution that you're still here, and so were, to my knowledge, most of your buddies. So you weren't doing stupid things, but you're exposed when you're down there riding a motorcycle. And you got to be smart, but then on the flip side of that, you're also so able to explore so many places you can go. Tell me, I mean, did any of your trips on bikes, does anything stand out as just an amazing location or an amazing experience?
I mean, I like we talked earlier, I think there was so many, and every year there would be multiple times where we just saw places that we had never seen, or we tried several times to get into areas that hadn't been explored yet, and we did break through a few times. I mean, whether there was like single track or, finding a trail that cattle had blazed or whatever. But